if he messes it up, he puts people's lives in danger. Or he could wind up screwing up some acquisition program that costs the taxpayers multiple billions of dollars more because he was unprepared for the job.
All right, we are back with Mark Kelly, Democratic Senator from Arizona. He was a Navy combat pilot, flew 39 missions in Operation Desert Storm. He was also a NASA astronaut and flew into orbit on 4 space shuttle missions. He's a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee and had some questions for Pete Hegseth on Tuesday. How you doing, Senator?
I'm good. How are you this morning?
I'm doing good, all things considered. Setting aside maybe the future of the Pentagon, I'm doing pretty good. All right, I wanted to start with your exchange with Pete Hegseth from the hearing yesterday. Let's take a listen.
And I just want you to tell me if these are true or false. Very simple. On Memorial Day 2014, at a CVA event in Virginia, you needed to be carried out of the event for being intoxicated.
Senator, anonymous smears.
Just true or false? Very simple. Summer of 2014 in Cleveland, drunk in public with the CVA team.
Anonymous smears.
I'm just asking for true or false questions. True or false answers. An event in North Carolina, drunk in front of 3 young female staff members after you had instituted a no alcohol policy and then reversed it. True or false?
Anonymous smears.
December of 2014 at the CVA Christmas party at the Grand Hyatt at Washington, D.C., you were noticeably intoxicated and had to be carried up to your room. Is that true or false?
Anonymous smears.
Another time, a CVA staffer stated that you passed out in the back of a party bus. Is that true or false?
Anonymous smears.
In 2014, while in Louisiana on official business for CVA, did you take your staff, including young female staff members, to a strip club?
Absolutely not. Anonymous smears.
So, is it accurate that the organization reached a financial settlement with a female staffer who claimed to be at a strip club with you, and there was a colleague who attempted to sexually assault her? Was there a financial settlement?
Senator, I was not involved in that. I don't know the nature of how that played out.
But you understand there was a financial settlement for a young female staffer who accused another member of the organization, not you, of sexual assault in a strip club.
We have multiple statements on the record referring to that.
But you claim you were not there when that occurred.
Absolutely not.
In that, in that back and forth there, I thought it was interesting that for some of the stories that you laid out, his answer was just anonymous smears. But then when we got to young ladies at the strip club, it was that's not true and also anonymous smears. So that was maybe a little bit of a reveal to me about whether the first stories were true or not. What did you think about your exchange?
Well, Tim, when I went in there yesterday morning, that was not the line of questioning I had planned on. I had this, plan to talk to him more about his management experience.
Yep.
At Vets for Freedom and Concerned Veterans of America, and how he managed these organizations and his financial management and the state that he left them in when he moved on, which is still unclear exactly how that happened. Was he asked to leave or was he removed? So that was, what I had planned. And then after some of my colleagues asked some of these other questions about personal issues, it became, kind of clear to me that there was a little bit of a conflict between him saying that he has these personal issues, but when asked about things that I think all of us would consider would be significant personal issues, he would just say smear. Yeah. That he's being smeared. So that's when I went in there and I said to my team, and we just kind of went and pulled all these specific cases. So the thing that concerned me more than what you just said about the last question was that he couldn't say if these things were true or false. Yeah. And it's a very simple question. And if you feel you've been smeared, it would be obvious. You would say, well, these are false.
And he did
You know,
say that
and-
in one case, which makes you think that maybe the other cases, they weren't false.
Well, exactly. Yeah. At the end, that is true. But just stepping through all these things, and I gave him more than one chance. I said, hey, I'm asking you, just tell me if this is true or false. And he wouldn't give me an answer. So, obviously I'm still concerned about this because the enormity of this job cannot be overstressed. It is perhaps besides maybe being president of the United States, it's one of the hardest jobs on the planet. And you got to be ready all the time. This is not a 9-to-5 job. This is 24/7, 365 days out of the year. You need to be available and ready. And we've had cases in our country's history where, Secretary of Defense has woken up in the middle of the night, actually often. But some, rather disturbing situations, you got to have a person there that's like ready to go.
Yeah, the enormity of the job question, this is what hangs over everything to me, is that I just, the lack of seriousness with which the Republicans took their job to advise and consent on him yesterday was pretty astonishing to me. There's a million examples of this, but there's just one clip I wanted to play for you, if you don't mind.
Because there's a lot about qualifications. And I think it's so hypocritical of senators, especially on the other side of the aisle, be talking about his qualifications, not being able to lead the secretary or be the Secretary of Defense, and yet your qualifications aren't any better. You guys aren't any more qualified to be the senator than I'm qualified to be the senator, except we're lucky enough to be here.
That was Republican Senator Mark Wayne Mullen of Oklahoma. I was watching that. I'm thinking, you're pointing at a damn astronaut. Pete is a weekend TV co-host who can allegedly do his job while half in the bag. I just the lack of caring about the fact that they're pulling this guy off the Fox and Friends couch and putting him in the most important job in the world. Was pretty astonishing to me. I don't know. What did you think about the defense of his resume from the Republicans?
Well, but also the whole thing about, we're talking about two different jobs. I mean, being a U.S. Senator, being the Secretary of Defense are on different planets. Yeah. I mean, they're a different kind of experience. I mean, you're not in the, in the nuclear command and control structure in the U.S. Senate. And what Mark Wayne was saying, you didn't play it, but about like seeing people on the floor of the Senate, with the same kind of issues. I've been there twice as long as he has, only 4 years. Yeah. He's been in the Senate 2 years. That is not something I have ever witnessed.
You haven't seen any hammered senators being pulled off the floor by their staff?
Not once. Pulled off the floor or not pulled off the floor. I've never seen that, not in a single occasion. Maybe he's talking about his experience in the House. He was a House member. And
Matt Gaetz was his colleague in the House.
Yeah,
so, people like to party in the House.
Yeah, I don't know what goes on there, but you're right. I mean, Pete Hegseth, nothing against folks in journalism, right? I mean, we've got a lot of folks up here, on Capitol Hill. It's a very important role that you have, especially when it comes to keeping people like me, politicians, folks in the Congress accountable. Very important role. I just don't see how that 9 years or 6 or 7, whatever he was there at the Fox Saturday Morning Show, has prepared him to walk into this job here potentially in a couple weeks and run this enormous agency where the consequences of your job performance are so significant. We've got, well over 1 million service members, and then there's government employees. Now, I served in the Navy for 25 years. The person at the top of the organization always matters. It matters a lot. If he messes it up, he puts people's lives in danger, or he could wind up screwing up some acquisition program that costs the taxpayers multiple billions of dollars more because he was unprepared for the job. And my Republican colleagues in this case, as you point out, they didn't, in my view too, I don't think they address some of the more serious issues that we have with this nominee for this job.
Yeah, and again, there are other jobs out there. Doug Burgum, if you kind of want to go around and do a quick one round of questions, 7 minutes, half day, move on. That's fine. I don't have any objection to that. But given what you just laid out about all of the different contingencies that you have if you are running the Pentagon. I interviewed Mark Hertling about this last week, and he laid all of this out so clearly. You have to just be pretty flabbergasted. Have you had any conversations with your fellow Republicans? Like they're just going to do 3 hours of questions to Pete Hegseth and rubber stamp him? Is there going to be another? I guess there's going to be some private meetings now, but do you have any sense whether there's any more vetting happening here, given the seriousness?
Well, I haven't spoken to them since yesterday. I did, at the committee hearing, I spoke to the chairman about having another round of questions. I think it's sort of unprecedented, how abbreviated this hearing was. This is the first one I've done for the Secretary of Defense. We should have had an opportunity to ask more. And I had a bunch of policy questions I wanted to ask him on specific programs.
Yeah.
On CJAD C2, on Sentinel, on SLICM N, on the state of our maritime industry, which is related to shipbuilding.
Sure. Couldn't
get to it because we're not allotted enough time. And, you get to, you're talking about, how significant this job is. And, I just cannot stress more how important it is to have somebody there that's, incredibly competent to do this. And it's an incredibly hard job. And I don't expect every nominee to check every box.
Sure.
But I'm trying to figure out which ones he does check.
Yeah, it's hard to think about any, do one that if he had the experience, but his personal life was a mess, that'd be one thing. Or if he, was a great leader in his community, but didn't quite have the experience, maybe it's another thing. But no, he's not checking anything. You mentioned that you hadn't planned to kind of ask the questions that you did. Are you coordinating with the other senators about this? There was some talk that maybe, given the fact that, look, Roger Wicker had a Ukraine pin on, maybe it would have been better to try to win Republicans over, to try to pin him down on policies where he is separate from the senators. I can't imagine Roger Wicker and Pete Hegseth have the same policy on Ukraine. How do you guys kind of decide, what the strategic approach is in these sorts of hearings?
Well, I would say on other nominees, because I did go through this experience with some of the other, lower DOD nominees at the beginning of the Biden administration, there is not a lot of significant coordination, but the seriousness of this hearing and the consequences of this hearing were such that we did ahead of time talk about it, sort of come up with a plan. Every senator kind of views them, not me, but might view themselves as, hey, they got the most important stuff. And you're kind of like a lone ranger out there. But for this, we did, and I actually asked the chairman or the ranking member, Jack Reed. I said, hey, we have to kind of coordinate because we don't all want to be asking the same exact thing. And in Hegseth's background, there is a lot of stuff to cover, and we have a limited amount of time. So we did, but I would say real time for a number of people, you're making adjustments, on the fly and kind of rewriting what you're going to do. I was sitting next to Alyssa Slotkin. I was the junior member on the committee for a while, and during the whole time, she was actually writing down what she was planning on asking. And I thought what she covered was really smart, and she was really effective in doing it.
Her material is great. I just talked to former Congressman Kinzinger about that exact exchange. Was that the most alarming thing? Obviously just his background and his existence as the Secretary of Defense is the most alarming thing, but of the actual substantive things you got into, his unwillingness to say, that he wouldn't oppose unlawful orders or that he wouldn't use the military to target citizens. Was that the most alarming part to you, or was there something else that jumped out?
No, I think that was it. For me, obviously, him not being able to answer my questions was a tell, and it was significant. But not, if he gets to the job, we're gonna all understand that he is going to be very reluctant to push back, even possibly when given an unlawful order from the President of the United States. He might be very hesitant to push back against those. And that's concerning.
Yeah. You've got another hearing. You're on the committee for Tulsi Gabbard. His or her confirmation's coming up soon. In a way that's a little bit of a different challenge than Hegseth, because I think it's possible, we'll see, that some of your Republican colleagues might be against her on policy grounds. So have you thought about that confirmation hearing and what you want to challenge her on, and whether any of the Republicans you think might share the concerns of the folks on the Democratic side when it comes to Gabbard?
Well, I know they do. I mean, just from my conversations I've had with them already. So there are, some concerns about FISA. She has changed her position dramatically on this issue. And this is the collection of foreign intelligence that we do through a program called FISA. It's 702. And it's the authority to be able to listen to foreign nationals when they're in another country, not in the United States. And there is some incidental collection issues if that foreign national happens to be talking to an American, and how all that stuff is handled. So she's done a 180 on this. That's a concern. I think some of my Republican colleagues, just like, the concern I have about how she views Snowden, and what she thinks, should happen with regards to a pardon of him. My view is he did incredible, long-lasting, and serious damage to our national security, and he's a criminal, and he should be prosecuted if we're given the opportunity. She seems to still think that he's sort of some kind of hero and should be pardoned for these actions. I know some of my Republican colleagues are concerned about that, but I think just like the Hegseth, there's going to be tremendous pressure on them to confirm all of these nominees.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see. Not knowing whether she knows who our ally is in the Russia-Ukraine war might be something interesting to explore. I'm not sure she knows which side she's supposed to be on in that.
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit. She was in my office last week, so we got to touch on a number of these topics. And
were you at all assuaged by?
I still have concerns about her taking on this role. I mean, she's her background as a member of the House is not with the intelligence community. Right. Same thing with her service, even though she holds I think a secret or top secret clearance. It is not the same as working with intelligence agencies. When I was on an aircraft carrier, I had a top secret clearance on the A6 Intruder. We were able to carry nuclear weapons, and also in targeting, we got to see sometimes top secret intelligence, but it's very limited. And you don't have it's not like your job where you're dealing with and trying to manage the intelligence. And the biggest issue I think I have, right now with Congresswoman Gabbard is just this predilection to go down the rabbit hole of misinformation. And where are you getting your information from, your sources, who are the experts you're using? There's this whole case in Syria with chemical weapons attacks that Assad did on his civilian population. And it's very clear, and I think even to her, that there were he was gassing and poisoning with chemical weapons his population. That wasn't really in dispute. But she used her political capital to defend him on two separate specific cases, and then didn't do it well, and was using, what I think most people would view as bad sources of information to try to make a case that in that specific instance that he did not use sarin gas from that weapon on this population. And it just seemed like a really odd thing to do. And the challenge that she will, face if confirmed as the DNI is you sometimes get conflicting information from the intelligence community.
Sure.
You're looking at these reports, and then they'll present to you here's the dissenting view on this. And you got to be able to sort it out and figure out, okay, what do I think is right here? And now I got to go to the president and say, hey, these are the 5 most important things today. And I think this is what you need to focus on. But if you have this tendency to kind of go down the rabbit hole every time with the disinformation and misinformation, That puts all of us at risk.
Yeah, if you can't tell the difference between Gateway Pundit and the Wall Street Journal, that's not, when it comes to reporting, that's not a great sign. Okay, I got to let you go. I have one last thing, though. I have to ask you. Just, we just have to get on the record on this. There's a lot of concerns Democrats are struggling with young men, and so I was watching it. I thought you gave Pete Hegseth some really good, tough questions, but I want to be clear, you don't have any issues with, pounding some beers on a party bus. Okay. If some bros want to pound some beers on a party bus on the way to the football game, that's okay with you. That's not your issue, right?
I spent 25 years in the Navy. I was a junior officer on an aircraft carrier in a squadron. Not my issue. But for the Secretary of Defense, when you have, and self-reported, by the way, in his books that he has this significant problem. And it's not like it was way in the past. I mean, some of these reports are just 2 months ago.
Have you ever passed out on a party bus?
Me? Never.
Keg stand? What about a keg stand, though? No
none
keg
of that.
stands? Okay.
None of that.
All right. What is your favorite beer? What are you drinking right now?
There is a local brewery called Moto Sonoran in Tucson, Arizona. And they've got a whole selection, and they make some pretty good beer.
I love Tucson's sneaky cool. So I'll have to go check it out the next time through.
Tucson's a cool place.
All right. Thank you so much, Senator Kelly. Come on back. We're going to have to talk about a little politics next time. A lot happening in Arizona, so we'll see you soon, all right?
Let's do that. All right.
Appreciate it.